human rights activist Martin Luther King, Chilean President Salvador Allende, and Archbishop Óscar Romero. Their assassinations changed the entire history of the 20th century. But it was only recently revealed that the crimes were commissioned by the same secret organization. And it was a carefully planned operation. Who needed to plunge entire countries into bloody chaos? On March 24th, 1980, Archbishop Óscar Romero was killed in the capital of El Salvador. The priest was shot right during the sermon.
He was a direct spiritual leader of his country, a very respected and positive person. He did a lot for his country. People loved him.
However, the American authorities did not like the Archbishop very much. The USA sponsored a coup in El Salvador. Óscar Romero spoke out sharply against the crude interference of the states in the life of his country.
The rule and influence of the USA came to the Republic. Leaflets began to be distributed, and in the literal sense, there was persecution of priests. The slogans were, "Be a patriot, kill a priest," and over several years, 6 priests were killed.
On the day of Archbishop Romero's funeral, a powerful explosion occurred at the main cathedral of El Salvador. Dozens of people were killed. After this tragedy, a revolution began in the country. The murder of Baptist minister and human rights activist Martin Luther King also led to mass riots. He was shot on April 4th, 1968, in Memphis. A week before that, King led a protest march in the city in support of striking workers.
Martin Luther King was preparing to give a speech and stepped out onto the balcony of his hotel room. At that moment, a shot was fired, presumably by a sniper. He sustained injuries that were incompatible with life. Martin Luther King passed away in the hospital.
Soon after, a man named James Earl Ray confessed to the murder. But when he was sentenced to 99 years, he suddenly claimed that he did not kill King. Ray asserted that American intelligence agencies forced him to take the blame.
In any country, intelligence agencies are involved in political games and confrontations. In the United States during the 60s, it was a struggle between socialist and communist ideas.
Martin Luther King fought for the rights of black people in America, led protests against racists in the state of Alabama, and spoke out against the Vietnam War. American leaders were concerned about the rapidly growing popularity of the preacher, whose views were at odds with the policies of the authorities.
After the death of such a prominent leader who advocated for equality, a wave of shootings, riots, and bloodshed swept across the United States. Ethnic groups and gangs whose goal was to fight against the white population became particularly active. All of this led to a serious escalation of violence.
The first socialist president of Chile, Salvador Allende, also became a victim of a conspiracy. On September 11th, 1973, a coup took place in Santiago. A military junta led by General Augusto Pinochet overthrew Allende and the popular unity government.
Allende was offered to board a plane and leave. In fact, these radio, communication, recordings have been preserved. He said, put him on the plane and on the way, the plane will crash, so we won't have any more problems with him.
Salvador Allende did not surrender to his enemies alive. According to the official version, the Chilean leader took his own life. But many historians are convinced that he was helped in this.
Not everyone was against the former government. A significant portion of the Chilean population, primarily the youth and leftist activists, were quite radically supportive of the leftist reforms implemented by Allende.
The socialist president ruled the country for 3 years. He came to power peacefully, winning the election in September 1970. The Soviet Union supported his candidacy. The United States, on the contrary, invested heavily in Allende's defeat in the elections. Upon taking office as president, he began actively nationalizing land and the mining industry. This caused discontent among the Chilean opposition and Washington.
Primarily, it was the dissatisfaction of American companies that controlled a significant share of Chilean copper mines. And essentially, the United States, as of 1971, feared the strengthening of the so-called leftist, democratic Chilean government.
Salvador Allende was a great friend of the Soviet Union. Even before his election, he visited the USSR 3 times, and when he became the head of the country, he began sending Chilean specialists to the Union. The Allende government almost doubled salaries, but there wasn't enough money. And then the Chilean authorities began printing currency that was not backed by anything. Inflation rose and goods disappeared from stores. Strikes began in the country. Ultimately, a military coup occurred. Power ended up in the hands of a junta led by Augusto Pinochet. He unleashed a bloody terror. Allende supporters were killed in broad daylight on the streets, sent to concentration camps, one of which was hastily set up in the country's largest stadium. Even Pinochet's supporters claimed that during the junta's rule, 3,000 people were killed. Opponents of the dictator insist that this number should be multiplied by at least 10.